When walking into the Avengers Age of Ultron, perhaps the most anticipated sequel ever released, I had one hope and one prediction. My hope was that the movie, of course, would be good, but that it would be good for different reasons and better reasons than the first movie was. The first Avengers suffered from a weak script, something any Joss Whedon production faces, and too many story beats that were just plain dumb, but it was good because in spite of any critical flaws, it remained fun and entertaining, mostly due to its collection of colorful characters portrayed by competent actors who were clearly having fun. I hoped the sequel would have a tighter script, a better overall story, more mature storytelling and dialogue, but I also hoped that it would not lose any of the original's charm. In other words, I really wanted it to be written and directed by anyone but Joss Whedon, but failing that, I hoped that he would at least rein himself in and give us something less like the Avengers and more like Guardians of the Galaxy. That didn't happen. My prediction is that I would like the movie more than the first one, but less so than Marvel's best, which would include Captain America the Winter Soldier and Guardians of the Galaxy. I also didn't really get that. What I got was a movie that starts off with a pretty good action set piece that immediately jumps into the core team, all fighting together against loose threads they plucked from the first Avengers movie and the second Captain America movie. It also introduces two new characters, Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch, whose origins were changed from mutants in the comics to genetically enhanced humans in the movie, both to be less confusing, and because all the mutant stuff is owned by Fox, who makes the X-Men movies. After this, though, the movie falls apart in a spectacular manner, as it jumps right into the awkward Ultron origin, with the thinnest thread that ties it to the first scene being the suggestion that the Scarlet Witch got into Iron Man's head and made him make some bad decisions that led to Ultron's creation. Except, there's the fact that Stark and Banner seem to have already been working on Ultron to begin with, and that a huge part of Stark's characterization in the previous movies he's been featured in has shown us that, while his heart is in the right place, he definitely doesn't need any plot device help in making bad decisions. Another thing that bothered me immensely was about rushing to get Ultron on the screen. It all felt very familiar, as Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver have a vendetta against Stark, water already treaded in the first Iron Man movie, and it was his past coming back to haunt him, a bridge passed over in the second one. Thankfully, the movie doesn't only focus on Stark, or this would have been unbearable. Avengers Age of Ultron falls apart so quickly and so completely that I was really prepared to call it a dud, but something interesting happens after Ultron's 3D printed origin story. The movie slowly starts to get better. The dialogue in the first third of the movie is painful, Joss Whedon's snarkfest bullshit, but slowly it starts to hit on more serious notes as the Avengers themselves face off against a character way more interesting than Ultron, the Scarlet Witch, played by Elizabeth Olsen, who gets into their heads one by one and exposes their fears and their closeted skeletons. We learn a lot about Black Widow's past, we learn a lot about Hawkeye's present, we do see Widow and Banner's slow-burning romance that you have a feeling it's not going to have a happy ending, but you'll wish for it anyway. Thor and Iron Man are hit the hardest by the mind games, as one is a god and the other clearly sees himself above most humans. And as the Ultron project started as a way to ensure peace and protect people, Stark has to struggle with trying to make things right, even if doing that is maybe the worst thing ever. And Thor has to decide what his role in protecting Earth entails and how much involvement he'll have to have. It starts to get interesting when characters aren't just there to smash things up and be sarcastic to each other. I have to bring up Ultron, of course. I didn't find him as interesting as the Scarlet Witch, but James Spader did do a great job with the role. But what is more interesting is that this guy is essentially Sephiroth from Final Fantasy VII. Yes, bear with me here. All of his character beats hits that. I mean, he starts off as a noble idea, goes insane when faced with reality, sees humanity as a disease and himself as a cure, is obsessed with leveling the world with a meteor and destroying his father, in which this case that would be Tony Stark. He kills one of the good guys and becomes something much more than he was physically, and in the end is reduced to a much weakened form and faces off one-on-one against one of the heroes and doesn't stand a chance. Yeah, he's Sephiroth. Once I realized this, that was around the time that the movie started to redeem itself. Not sure if that's a coincidence or not. All in all, Age of Ultron does manage to be more serious and smarter than the Avengers, but it gets there kicking and screaming. Before you get to the mature part of the film, you go through a really awkward puberty where the film clings to the snark and flash of the first film, but without the charm. Turns out I like the first one more, but it also turns out I didn't hate this one. I think if Ultron's origin was handled better, bringing him out into the forefront slower, while the superior characters that were Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch were brought out faster, the movie could have been better. I also feel like coming into the film a half hour late would work too. You don't miss much if you do that. I will also say that completely changing the team dynamic at the end is interesting, as it looks like in the next film we'll have a completely new team of Avengers with Captain America and one other character staying over to lead them. But I know Marvel Studios probably won't resist dragging Thor and Iron Man back in simply because it'll mean more money, which makes me wonder, how willing are they to take risks? Sure, Guardians of the Galaxy proved that they could take risks and win big, but will they do it with their cash cow franchise, the Avengers? I definitely hope so. In summary, Age of Ultron starts off with a bang and then fizzles hard. It struggles and fights its way back, eventually giving us a decent Marvel movie, just not the great one that I was hoping for. You'll get plenty of cameos and fan-awesome moments, and eventually you'll get a compelling storyline, but the movie requires a big investment in both time and patience to pay off. I'll give it a 7 out of 10.